Okay, cool. Okay, what is up? Welcome to your Daily Dose of Awesome, your life 50 minutes of daily motivation, inspiration, and education so you can get your day started right. Today, I want to talk about egos. And no, I don't have JT on because I think he has a big ego. I want him to help me understand the ego of somebody who's made it, somebody who's successful or has some success, and kind of like how to navigate the waters. Because sometimes you may notice that the egos of people you see as successful or are successful tend to be a little difficult to navigate. You think that just because you have success or somebody has success, they have it all together, but I don't know. I think it kind of just amplifies some character issues. So JT, I'm so glad you're on here because I wanted to pick your brain around this topic. It's something that's kind of been on my mind, recently with a few experiences and things I've observed in the industry. So appreciate you being here with me, brother.
Hey, man, I appreciate you calling me out. It's great to be with you. Great to be back with our community again.
Yeah, awesome, man. So, if you don't know who we are Elite Marketing Pro. My name is Ferny and JT. I'm Elite Generation online marketing expert specializing in helping home business owners, that's network marketers, affiliate marketers, direct sellers, multiply their incomes using the internet. I built my first six-figure network marketing business within a couple of years of discovering the online strategies we teach here at Elite Marketing Pro. And over the past 10 years, I've personally been responsible for over 16, going on $17 million in gross income into my home businesses. And more importantly, I've helped our clients produce hundreds of millions of dollars collectively in their businesses as well. So what we do and teach works. But on this live, I'm going to get a little bit off the path, not really talking about building online, so to speak, but how to navigate some of the difficult situations you run into when you deal with some of the egos that you'll deal with when you're around a lot of successful people. And so, JT, if you don't mind, man, I wanted to just hop right into this. Are you ready?
Absolutely, yeah, man. Let's do this.
Yeah, guys. If you're watching this for the first time, you want to tune in the future. You can simply if you're on your phone, you can pretty much just click on the video, and it should open up a menu where you can follow us. There's also a ellipsis symbol in the top right of the video. When you click on it, and there you'll be able to turn on live notifications, so you get a little ping on your phone every time we go live. And this is how we deliver our most impactful content. So let me just check to see if we are live first and foremost. 1 second. Looks like we are. Let me see if people can hear us or if we have to start over, JT.
All right.
Let me see. All right, sweet. All right, yep, we are live.
Awesome.
Awesome, guys. Let me just turn the volume. All right, so JT, I want to talk about taming egos, but more importantly, I want to also talk about checking your ego, and not your ego specifically, but just
my ego.
Just because I'll give you some examples of a couple of stories. Community has already heard of a situation where some of our community members got in trouble with the not the company, but their upline, very successful upline that built their business many years ago, one of the top earners in the company, and he just simply did not like what we were doing here at EMP. It's so far off what he does. He teaches, old school and home parties and all that stuff, and obviously that's not what we're about. We're about taking the business into the 21st century and empowering people with actual business skill sets. And so it creates an issue because I see this over and over again in our space where top earners start kind of believing their own hype, and they start believing that what they've done and how they created success is the only way to create success, and they're not really open to two things. They're not open to feedback, and they're not open to the idea that business changes and you have to adapt or evolve. It's almost like the way they've built, the way they've created their business is tied to their identity. And so I wanted to kind of talk about that and get your feedback because I have some thoughts on it as well. And then there was a more recent situation where we hired a marketer to help us with something within our company, and this person's supposed to be the best of the world at what they do, but just something wasn't clicking with us. And my contention was that it's something particular to our situation but this individual wasn't open to feedback because already believing that they're the best of the world at something, and we're trying to say no, something's not working, and I think this is it, and kind of like no, I know what's going on. I don't need to get that feedback from you, and pretty much it led to just us parting ways from a business standpoint, and it just it boggled my mind a little bit because how could this person not want feedback on how they're providing us a service, but why won't they be open to the feedback if it can help them in the future for their business as well? So what are your thoughts on what I just said first and foremost? Because you said some pretty enlightening things when we were offline here.
It's interesting, Fern, because what you're describing is something that literally every human being has the capability of experiencing. And it's an interesting thing because it seems to be mostly a human thing. I don't know much about chimpanzees and things like that, but I do know that as human beings, we have the ego. The ego is always going to be a part of it. And when you were talking about the upline that was very successful and had generated success for his downline, now all of a sudden becoming so close-minded and actually thrashing people's reputation because they were going to go against how he teaches things. That's a prime example of somebody whose identity is so strongly attached to what they have accomplished, right? Not who they are, but what they've accomplished. And then on the other side, the marketer who unfortunately was not open to feedback from you guys to talk about how you as their client could be better served by them. Again, this is an example where the ego is too closely attached to their identity, or their identity rather is too closely attached to their achievements. Let me be clear. We all have an ego, and what got those people to the top, and by the way, this is both men and women. I think a lot of times we think ego is this strong kind of male type of thing, but women can have an ego too, and we actually probably could figure out all kinds of great examples of this. But when we get to the top of something, especially something challenging, something that is a competitive thing like business can be, it requires some ego. You got to have a strong belief in yourself. You got to have a strong belief in what you do. You have to believe that you're the best. And obviously, in the case of the marketer that you were describing, that person is likely the best in the industry. They don't get there. You don't get to become the best without some ego. But you got to think of ego a little bit like a performance-enhancing drug. If you remember back in the 80s and 90s, Fern, you're a baseball guy, and so you know that in pretty much all sports, whether it was the Olympics, college football, pro football, baseball, basketball, in the 80s and 90s, there was a huge blow-up about steroid use. And there was, all these people coming out as being, using steroids, and that's how they got bigger, stronger, faster. Well, the interesting thing is, very much like ego, or very much like steroids, ego can be abused, right? And yeah, it can blow you up. It can actually push you forward, but it can also hurt you. You use steroids, it will kill you. We see all these high-profile athletes who their health was compromised because they use steroids. But doctors and physicians actually prescribe steroids to help their patients overcome illness, sickness, injuries, and things like this. So it's kind of this weird duality. Does it work? Yeah, absolutely. Can it blow your performance up? Yeah, it can. But it can also crush and destroy your performance as well. So if we lead with too much ego, then obviously you're going to get what you guys have been seeing and what we all can see evidence of in other examples. But then we have to find that fine line between how we use ego and use it to our advantage without allowing it to hurt ourselves and the people around us.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And, I want to get feedback from our people here. If you guys have experienced, run into a brick wall almost with an upline or a leader where you're trying to share something different or new, even if it wasn't an online strategy, but something that was working for you, and you ran into a brick wall, drop me a number 2 in the comment section if you've ever run into that ego that's just not willing to listen. Somebody more successful than you in a particular field, but you've discovered something that they might help that person, and they just weren't open to that feedback. And so, JT, for me, I have some notes here, and I have some thoughts on kind of like what happens to people when they become successful. For me, first and foremost, I think success, especially money, amplifies your character. Whether it's good character, bad character, it's going to amplify it. And I think sometimes when you're absolutely right, we all have an ego, and we all kind of, to a certain extent, need it. But it also, I think, ego sometimes limits our self-awareness. good people that have big egos can become difficult to work with. And what I've reminded myself as as things have gone on and things have gone well in my business is that when you develop a big ego, your humility becomes very limited. So your success amplifies, your ego amplifies. You become difficult to work with. Humility, starts getting diminished. Your empathy towards others also, I think, becomes limited because you're no longer able to kind of see yourself in the shoe steps or the shoes of that new person, and more focused on what you can do rather than what somebody lower than you is probably experiencing. What are your thoughts on what I just shared?
I think it's awesome. Like you hit it right on the head, and that is that it is about self-awareness. It's almost as if the more ego is involved in your life or in your decision making, the less self-aware you are, and almost vice versa, right? The more self-aware you are, the less you allow your ego to run away with you. The way I like to think of it is ego is kind of like pennies. You can stack pennies only so high, right? And the higher you stack that stack of pennies, the more unstable it becomes. So the more ego we bring into it, the more unstable our performance is going to be, and the more unstable our business, the more unstable our relationships are going to be. Think about anybody, and I know a lot of people here typing into the chat box, they've had examples or they've had experiences of people in their lives, maybe they've done business with, that have had extreme egos. It's really hard to be around those people, right? And you see these like real famous marketing gurus online, and they're flashing their cars and their jets and their mansions and all this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that stuff. I mean, honestly, there's nothing wrong with material wealth. There's nothing wrong with success at all. But when we lead with it and we use it again as our identity, it becomes very difficult to be around those people. It's a very shallow existence for them. It's a very difficult existence for the people around them. And so as business owners, right, and as leaders, we have to be very, very cautious because we can get ourselves trapped in a place where our ego has become so out of control that the ego itself starts to defend itself. And so what you were talking about with self-awareness, we lose our self-awareness. And we are so enraptured by, in fact, we're so almost imprisoned by our ego that who we really are and what in that level of self-awareness of who we are at our soul gets diminished, gets eclipsed, gets sort of shadowed by that massive ego that just needs to be fed all the time.
Yeah, and actually, I want to get feedback from our audience here as well, or from our members. Now, I'm going to flip the question. If you've ever been in a situation where you allowed your ego to get the better of you and possibly damage a relationship or create a difficult situation where you were the one responsible, be honest, drop me a number 4 if you've ever been in a situation where you allowed your ego to get the best of you. Because here's the thing, ego, I think, quite in layman's terms, this is kind of what happens. You're less likely to listen. So when you think you know it all, you're less likely to listen. You're less likely to want to understand. And you also make assumptions about what other people are experiencing because you think you know it all. And ultimately what that leads to is damaging of relationships, or potentially damaging relationships. And I guess sometimes when I run into egos in our space, I try to be aware of when that's happening, and almost like try to manage that situation, relationships, in a way where I almost take responsibility on behalf of that person and try to repair that relationship, because I know what happened. I know that maybe I didn't do anything myself that was wrong, but I know that there maybe someone's ego got in the way, and so I'm going to kind of smooth or massage that situation to kind of make that person kind of snap back into reality. So what do you suggest when you're dealing with somebody, let's say an upline, with an ego, and they're not open, not to listening? What should an individual do, from that point, if they're caught in that situation?
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a great real world example of what happened to me, and it wasn't with an upline, it was actually with a superior officer. So United States Naval aviators, we're the best of the best. It's the toughest training, we're the best aviators in the world. And we know that, and everybody else around us knows that. And just me saying that is very ego driven, very inflated. But empirical data can prove that we're the best of the best. Just ask us. And I'm kind of joking here. I'm trying to kind of role play a little bit to give you an idea of what that environment is like. You're dealing with high performers that on a daily basis are involved in a very high impact, high stakes career. So on September 11th, 2002, exactly 1 year after the 9/11 attacks, we were flying a combat mission out of the Middle East, and I was the second in command, well, really the third in command of my crew, but I was the second pilot in command beneath the mission commander. And so everybody on our crew that day had gotten sick. They'd come down with some sort of a stomach flu, except for myself and the mission commander. And I voiced it to him. I said, man, obviously this was a very monumental day. It was the 1 year anniversary. We were going to go fly a mission that didn't necessarily need us as the crew. We had a backup crew that could easily fly the same mission, but it was kind of a feather in the cap. This was a big deal to fly this particular mission. The fact that we got selected to fly it was kind of an honor. So we're going to go out and we're going to go fly this mission. Yet everybody on our crew, we had 12 people, and 10 of us were sick to our stomachs. Not myself, but myself and the aircraft commander were the only healthy people. Now you can imagine, we're flying in the heat of the Middle East. You're flying airplanes, which means you're getting bumped around. It's going to be a dynamic thing, and everybody's sick. And so I turned to him in the cockpit, just as we're about to do the before start checklist to go through everything to get the aircraft up and running. And I said, hey, sir, everybody on this crew is sick right now. We're all compromised, and we're going to go out and do a very dangerous, demanding mission. I suggest that we think about this, talk about this, and maybe hand it to the next crew. And he looked me in the eye and he goes, JT, noted, before start checklist. Basically, it was his way of telling me, screw you, we're doing it my way. Now, the good news is we went out and flew the mission, we accomplished the mission, everybody was miserable, but we got it done, which is a testament to the grit and the determination of the crew. But my point is this: if you're in a situation where you've got an upline who's that sort of tyrannical, if you want to call him that, or that dictatorial, you, number one, you have to have the courage to stand up. You have to have the courage to speak out. You have to have the courage to believe in yourself and fight for what's worth fighting for. There's another part where you have to be able to say, okay, I've fought the good fight. Now I either have to get in line and support the people I'm here to support. So in my case, that's what I had to do. I had to follow the orders of the officer in charge, because while they weren't unlawful, they were highly irresponsible. But it was not an unlawful. If he'd have said, hey, we're going to go do something unlawful, then I would have stepped up and got off the airplane and called it quits. So if you've got people that you're answering to, or you're upline, and they're doing something illegal, then you absolutely have to step out. But if they're doing something that's not necessarily illegal but might be slightly harmful, that's where you have to step up. You have to voice out and be courageous enough to be heard. It's not always going to come out the way you want, and it might get messy, it might get ugly, but the fact of the matter is that when you're dealing with egos, the worst thing you can do is to get into a tug of war, where it's your ego against theirs, or where you bow down and allow that ego to just run over you.
Awesome, man. That's pretty awesome advice. So guys, if you guys are getting value from this topic, if this is having an impact in some way, shape, or form in your life, drop me a number 6. Let me know that this is really helping you, at least in some way, navigate these waters. Because as you become more successful, guess what? You're going to be around other successful people, and those successful people have egos. So how do you navigate these waters? The good news is that most successful people in our space do a lot of personal development, and so they all, or not all, but most, generally speaking, have a level of self-awareness that maybe in other industries you wouldn't have as much, because there's not that emphasis. So that's the awesome thing about network marketing, is that the heavy emphasis on personal development. Therefore, you're going to be around people with more self-awareness. That being said, that doesn't mean that you're not going to run into these issues. And so I want to close out, JT, with some tips for our people here, to help them as leaders. My assumption is that everybody watching this call is a leader, because if you're pursuing online strategies, if you're pursuing building your business online, guess what? You're a pioneer in probably your company, if not at least your organization, because you've chosen to do something different, and so you've identified yourself as a leader, because you're going to go off exploring on your own and find a better way. And so here's my advice to you guys, as a way to check your ego, not necessarily eliminate it, because you, like JT says, you do need a certain level of it. Basically, assume you're the least smartest guy in the room. Be open and willing to hear from everybody around you. And yeah, can't tell you how many times I've been around marketers who want to impress you with how much they know and what they know. And I've gotten a lot of compliments. In fact, the business relationships I've created, over and over again, people tell me that when they meet me, that I'm very unassuming. I'm almost the quietest guy in the room. And so what happens is that when I actually say something and speak, people tend to listen. And so they listen more intently because I don't speak very often. And then, I make sure that what I say is impactful and important. And but also the reason why whatever I say at that given time is of value to everybody is because I took the time and I was listening the whole time, assuming that I had a lot to learn from everybody in the room. And so be willing to learn from people who are less experienced than you are. So be willing to kind of if you're upline and you're on top of the pyramid, so to speak, be willing to go down to that base of your organization and listen to what people are going through. I was just reading a book by Ned Colletti, who's a former GM of the Dodgers. He's still in the Dodgers organization. And by the way, Game 7, it's happening tonight. Go Dodgers for the World Series. And so I'll be at Game 7 tonight. In fact, I was at Game 6 last night. And so even getting up for this live was a little rough. But
see, your ego was small, right? Your humility was like, hey, I got to go serve my community. So you got your butt up out of bed, dude. That's awesome.
And I found a tag team partner to help me, so I didn't have to do it by myself.
Yeah, you were humble enough to ask for help.
So anyway, Ned Colletti was saying in his book, because he was dealing with the McCourts at the time, the owners of the Dodgers, and specifically Mrs. McCourt, the wife of the owner. And she approached him, and Ned has a lot of experience in baseball, running organizations, etc. And over again, she would ask him, for me to basically get a better understanding is how to improve this team, how to improve this organization, what do you recommend I do? And Ned responded, my recommendation is to go amongst the people in your organization, walk down the hallways that you normally don't walk down, go find an empty cubicle near the some of the lower level employees in this organization, and just sit there and listen around to what their experience is. You'll be amazed and blown away by what you learn and how much better you can become by just doing something like that. And so I thought that was incredible advice to go find a cubicle in an area of this building that you don't normally go to and just listen to your employees. And assume everyone, but that being said, assume everyone around you, I had it in my notes, has something to teach you. And I think that's why I'm willing to humble myself. The final thing is, be willing to humble yourself around people. I think one of the reasons I've been able to make an impact and form the relationships I have is because of what I said. I tend to at first be the quietest guy, but when I listen and I soak in, try to make sense of everything these brilliant marketers and leaders around me in this space are sharing, and then when I speak up, it's something that's impactful. And mainly it's impactful because I listened and I managed to formulate something that I thought was important to share. And so for me, it served me to assume you're the least smartest dude in the room, but it doesn't mean you don't have anything important to share. So final thoughts, JT.
You know what? Everything you just said to me is not only a great reminder, but I think something that should be said over and over and over again. I think it's a message that needs to be heard even more so these days. I agree with you, and one thing I was taken aback by when I first met you, Fernie, was how humble you were, how reserved you were. It was kind of cool, like you were in the room. There was definitely, you knew Fernie Ceballos was in the room. That's why I first referred to you as the godfather of our industry, because you have this like sort of presence, man. Like everybody knows you're there without you having to pound your chest and come into it. And I think that's a great example for us all to follow. I think there's something to that where, you can kind of be your own version of Fernie's demeanor, Fernie's approach to the room. You said, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And I totally agree with you. I think that that's one of the most important things. And when we were talking about those examples of the marketer and the upline, these are people who are doing one important mistake, which I'll get to in just a second. They're making one critical error in the way that they behave. The last thing I want to say before I get to that one critical error so we can all avoid it is this. You were talking about how, you go around and you talk to those empty cubicles, or go find those people that are kind of on the lower levels of the organizational chart. We used to call that in the Navy walking the deck plates, and it was one of the most important things I ever got from my experience as a leader. What that means is you surround yourself with really two kinds of people. They're both great people, they're both capable people, but one is a mentor, somebody who's extremely knowledgeable and experienced. And the second one is the brand new person, the person that works in the mailroom, the person, maybe you've got a VA, a virtual assistant, maybe it's even your kids. I can't even begin to tell you how many leadership and life and even business lessons I've learned from my 9-year-old son and my 12-year-old daughter, simply because they have a different perspective on life. They're going to show you things that as a leader you may not be seeing, right? So you have to have that ability to take the ego away and say, hey, brand new person, or person with very little experience, what is your perspective on this? And learn from them. So what's that critical error that the upline was making and that the marketer was making that we can all avoid? And I think probably the single most important thing, at least that I've learned as a leader, and that is this. You have to challenge yourself every single day. Because if you get sucked into the status quo, if you get sucked into your own flat line, into your own plateau, it doesn't matter how badass you are, it doesn't matter how much money you've made, how big your downline is, how big your influence is. The minute you start reading and believing your own press clippings, so to speak, is the minute you get lazy. And both those guys that you described, Fernie, have gotten emotionally or mentally lazy. Maybe not physically lazy, but they've certainly gotten lazy. So my challenge to you all right now today is to push yourself today and every single day. Push yourself physically. Get to a place of complete discomfort. Work out so hard that you're like breathing to the point where you're like, whoa, that was too much. That will humble you faster than anything. But here's the other part. Push yourself mentally. Do something today that you've been putting off. Push yourself emotionally. Go to a place, work on that dark part of your life that you've been working on. Maybe it's that thing that you're ashamed of. Maybe it's that thing that you've been regretting. Maybe it's that thing you've been putting off. You're like, hey, I'm going to launch that product. I'm going to do my first Facebook Live. Whatever it is, push yourself, because that's what real leaders do. They ask for assistance from a mentor and from somebody who's brand new, and they challenge themselves. And I mean really, really push and challenge themselves. When you do that, you will avoid those mistakes that we've been hearing about just on this call and all the other ones that we all know about.
Awesome, JT. Guys, give JT some love. Drop him number 7. Lots of hearts. So 7 hearts, thumbs up. That was amazing, man. And we're getting some great feedback from people. Jeanette saying, you guys are awesome. Thanks for filling us every day with the things that help us grow. Listen and silent have the same letters for a reason. So that was interesting. I never noticed that. The words listen and silent have the same letters.
That's cool, man.
That's really cool. And so lastly, I want to say, those Elite Marketing Pro members, No Excuses pre-sale tickets go on sale today. So if you want to be a part of No Excuses, book your tickets ASAP. So I think we'll be going live at noon Pacific. That's 3 o'clock Eastern. If you guys are VIP members already, there's going to be a link in your back office to submit your deposit. Otherwise, you'll be able to go to elitemarketingpro.com/NES when we are live at 3 o'clock Eastern. Lastly, also, I want to say, go Dodgers. We will be winning the World Series tonight. And hopefully,
awesome, man. Good luck.
I won't be eating my words tomorrow.
No way, man. I believe in you guys.
Awesome,
Good
guys.
luck for that. And I'm stoked about NES 9 too, Fern. I'm telling you, it's going to be an awesome event. It's going to be the best one to date. So if it was me, I would go get my tickets right now.
They can get it right now at 3 o'clock Eastern. So
don't make excuses. No excuses.
We'll make it. We'll put an announcement in the community so you guys be aware. Turn on notifications inside the Facebook group in the community. Make sure those notifications are on, especially in our VIP group. We'll make sure you guys get the info you need. So take care, everybody. Have an awesome day, and I will see you guys on TV at Game 7 of the World Series. Take care.
Right on.